Hi everyone, Quincas Synth DIY guy here. Welcome to part 4 of my video series on the Erica Synths Polivoks inspired DIY kit bundle. This is the final installment and it's actually going to be pretty much just a demo of the functions and fun things that you can do with it. All the build is already done. I used my own skiff, so this is not the Erica skiff, but this is the kit, the completed kit that you get when you order the bundle. So, quick overview: MIDI to CV, 2 oscillators, a mixer, a modulator, the Polivoks voltage controlled filter, 2 envelope generators, and a dual VCA and a really nice output module. So the output module right now, I'm using the headphones output into my audio interface, and the Arturia key step is my controller, and I have it connected via MIDI to the MIDI to CV converter here. So right off the bat, when I play any keys, you see the MIDI activity LED light up, and you also see the gate LEDs light up. Leave the glide at 0 for now. Let's start by making a really simple subtractive patch like the kind you would get out of the normal Polivoks. So we'll connect a saw wave from oscillator 1 to the mixer, pulse wave from oscillator 2 to another channel of the mixer. Let's throw in some noise in there since we have a third channel for the mixer anyway. Output of the mixer, it has 2 identical outputs. We'll use output 2 and plug it into the filter. This will be a monophonic voice with 2 oscillators for now. I'll show you later how you do it. Duophonic voice. And the output into input of VCA1 here, and we can take the output 1 of the VCA into, there we go. Already we can hear some stuff. Let's pull it down for now. Cool thing about the output module is that left and right are normal to each other, so when you plug something into just the left input, you will actually hear it on both speakers in both sides of your headphone. Until you plug something into the right speaker, then they get separated and you hear things in stereo. Now we're going to plug the MIDI to CV converter. So first we'll get CV 1 into 1 volt per octave input of oscillator 1 and 2 to 2. And we'll take gate inputs. Cool thing about this MIDI to CV converter is it has 2 pairs of outputs. So when you're in one voice mode, it's actually like having a buffered multiple. So you're not passively splitting those signals, and you can have very accurate voltage that way. Now I'm plugging in the 2 gate outputs from the MIDI to CV converter. And actually, I want to take a look at what's going on in the scope. So instead of plugging the VCA output straight into our output module, I'm going to plug it in a multi here. I have a multiple going on here, and we'll take signal from the multiple now back into output, and there we go. Already we can hear and see what's going on. Cool. So now we patch the envelope generator number 1 to the filter CV input 1, and envelope generator number 2 to CV input of the VCA. So that's your basic Minimoog, or in this case Polivoks type patch. Let's turn up the CV level attenuator on the filter, bring that level up a little bit. And now when I play the keyboard, I should hear something. There we go. I want the note to sustain, so I'm going to bring the filter up a little more. There we go. And let's turn the noise down for now and leave just 1 oscillator on. That sounds pretty cool already. Let's bring up an octave. Alright, I don't know if this is actually C, I don't care. I care that both oscillators are in tune to each other though. So now I'll turn oscillator 2 up. Now they're in tune to each other. So there you go. That's a good starting point with this kit once you have it all up and running. If you're not too familiar with subtractive synthesis, I suggest you familiarize yourself with this patch in particular. So basically, both oscillators into the mixer into the filter into the VCA and filter controlled by one envelope generator each. I have a high sustain on the VCA envelope and a low sustain on the filter envelope. That way you can sustain the note by holding your key down, but you will hear a sweep of frequency in the filter. So that's more interesting than if you have one envelope doing both duties, or if you have both envelopes with high sustain, you won't really hear too much of a filter sweep. Now another thing we can do to make this more interesting is use the triangle wave of the modulator into CV input 2 of the filter, and maybe make that a little subtler. There you go, a little faster. So you get a little movement there with the filter. Let's try a sequence. Record. Faster. Cool thing about these oscillators is they have octave switches, so you can change the relationship between them. Whereas if you use the octave switch on the keyboard, oops, should have turned off record here. There you go. They go together, but if I use the octave switch on the oscillators, then you change the relationship between them. You can also change the interval between them. Great sounding synth. Filter is kind of gnarly, kind of distorted. When you open it up, it distorts less. Let's listen to the resonance a little bit. Low resonance, high resonance. Let's give it more decay on the filter envelope. So cool. So that's like your basic monophonic patch. But the thing with this MIDI to CV converter though is it's got a 2-voice mode, and so does the VCA. So that means we can actually create duophonic stereo voice, for example. So let's see how we would do that. So let's just pull everything out and start again. I want it to be not only duophonic but also stereo, so that each voice is coming out of a different speaker. We're gonna redo the whole patch. So here we go. Since we only have one filter, I'm gonna bypass the filter, and I'm actually gonna send the triangle wave, which is already much lower in harmonics, so it won't be so harsh sounding without a filter. We use the triangle wave from each voice into different inputs in the VCA, right? We'll keep the VCA in single mode, that way it's working in parallel. So each VCA is going to respond to a different voice. Oh, we're also going to use the envelope generators. Now that we're not using a filter, we can use each envelope generator for each separate voice. Right? Now the MIDI to CV converter, we're going to switch it to 2-voice mode, and we're going to send separate triggers to each envelope generator. Let's set the envelope generators to the same setting. And here we go. Let's put in the gate, channel 2 gate, envelope 2. So already both envelopes are receiving gates from separate voices on the MIDI to CV converter, and they're triggering separate VCAs in our dual VCA. And now we have a choice. We can use the mix out from the VCA in mono, and that would give us a mono duophonic patch. But I'm gonna take this advantage to actually see how our output module acts as stereo when you plug different things into it. So now I just need to connect the CV outputs of the MIDI to CV converter into the 1 volt per octave inputs of the oscillators. So now we should hear something. For some okay. Right. It only triggers a second voice once you play a second note, right? Just like having two synthesizers, two monophonic synthesizers going on at once, controlled by the same keyboard, right? Except that the filter, there's only one filter. One way to use this filter would be to use it after the VCAs. We would have it mono then. So let's check that out. Let's take out the connections to the output module, and we'll take the mix out from the VCA and throw that into the filter. And now we'll take the output of the filter and send that to left input of the output module. Yeah, so now we have a filter in there. This is more like paraphonic than polyphonic, because you'd really need two filters to make it fully polyphonic. But it's pretty cool. We could split one of the envelope outputs and control the filter with the same envelope. But what I'm going to do is just send the triangle wave from the modulator into CV input 1 of the filter just to move it and activate it a little bit. Now the MIDI to CV has a few idiosyncrasies. Maybe with a future firmware these could be addressed. Like if you play simultaneously, you actually have to play low note first and then the high note if you want to hear both notes. So if you play 2 notes together and you happen to hit the top note first, then you won't really hear the 2 notes, because the low note will always take first note and low note always take left side channel of the MIDI to CV. So if you play 1 note and then you play another lower note, that same voice will just change instead of adding a second voice. Now if I play a low note first and then a high note, then you will activate the second channel of the MIDI to CV converter. So when you want to sound like you're playing two notes simultaneously, you kind of have to roll your hand so like that. So you're actually hitting the low note first. If you do it the other way around, it won't really work. And so that works really well if you want to hold down, for example, hold down a bass note and play sort of melodies on top. It works really well. Right? But it won't work so well if you want a high drone, right? Because then it'll be just one voice switching back and forth. The second voice will really only kick in if you maintain the low voice. So that's my only reservation about this MIDI to CV converter in duophonic mode. In monophonic mode, it's just awesome. Now, it's got a glide, which is actually analog. It's a dual potentiometer and capacitors in there. So you're actually creating a analog slew, glide, or portamento, however you want to call it. And it sounds really cool. Here it is in maximum. It's actually quite fast. If you leave it subtle, it also just gives it sort of like a whap 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 kind of a. If you takes a little getting used to, but it's really cool. It's certainly better than not having a duophonic mode at all. You just need to kind of get used to using it, and you have a two-voice polyphonic synth, and it's actually not paraphonic. If you don't use the filter, it's truly polyphonic because you have two oscillators, two envelope generators, and two VCAs. So a paraphonic would be if you just use the two oscillators going through the same VCA and the same filter. So cool. So now let's check out let's do some crazier things. Let's check out the sample and hold, because it's a really, really accurate and stable sample and hold. Almost sounds like it's actually digital, but it's not. It's analog, and it uses a very special chip that nowadays is only made in Riga, so you can only really get it from Erica Synths, and it's unbelievably stable. I know this is difficult in analog because I've had a few analog sample and holds before, and it's quite common that they will droop a little bit, you know, depending on what kind of capacitor you use, what kind of circuit, if it's just a JFET, if it's a dedicated sample and hold chip. So let's check that out. Let's make some fun random noises here. We can start by patching oscillators into filter, and we'll do that. Since the filter doesn't have two audio inputs, we do need to use the mixer. So, and I do like to mix pulse wave with saw wave. And then we'll go from there to the filter, and from the filter to a VCA. And then from the VCA, let's take a look at what's happening. So we're going to go to the oscilloscope and control the VCA with an envelope generator. Right. Cool thing is the envelope generator is actually normaled high. So if you don't patch anything into it, it'll be in whatever the voltage would be, whatever you have for your sustain setting, right? And you can put it in cycle mode too, but right now we're going to actually trigger it from the pulse wave of the modulator module, which is also running the clock of the sample and hold, right? Now, if you have a fast attack, This gate delay output right here, it goes high after the attack stage. So if you have a fast attack, it's actually simultaneous. So in a way, it can be used as a multiple of the gate. So I'm going to actually use that to trigger the second envelope generator. And that second envelope generator, again, is going to trigger our filter. And our sample and hold is going to run both oscillators. Now, here's a case where I'm actually going to use something external to the bundle, which is just a multiple. You can use like one of those little ninja stars, like these guys. I have a few of these. There's also a video of mine that shows you how to make a very simple passive splitter, basically, passive multiple. This one is actually a passive V Brazil modular multiple. We have an active one too. And the passive one is handy because you don't even need to plug it in anywhere. And now I can send the same sample and hold output to, actually, instead of using the 1 voltage per octave input, I'm going to use the FM input, because that's going to give me an attenuator to control the range of pitch variation that I'll get from the sample and hold. So let's use the FM input on both of these. We'll put them all the way high for now. And now we can take that oscilloscope multiple output and send it in, and we'll hear something. That's cool. That's your classic R2D2 kind of sounds going on. And the frequency of the modulator determines the frequency of the pulse wave, which is triggering our envelope generators, which are controlling both filter and VCA, and also cycling through the notes of the sample and hold. Let's put it slow so you can see how steady these notes are, how stable they are. How about we add a little release to the envelope generators too. That's really nice and stable sample and hold. And now, since I have the voltage from the sample and hold connected, the sample and hold is actually normalized, the voltage input is normalized to the noise, the internal noise source. But if I use the triangle wave, for example, and connect that to the CV in, well, actually that's not going to be too interesting because it's synchronized to the pulse, so it's always going to be high. It would be more interesting to use an external one. So what we can do, and here's what's interesting about these envelope generators, let's remove it from the filter, and we're no longer triggering it from the gate delay from the other one. And what we'll do is we'll put it in cycle mode now, and bring in that sustain and release, and now our attack and decay determine the speed of rise and speed of fall. So it's more like a function generator or like an LFO. And you can take that now and stick it into the CV input, and now we're gonna see instead of random, it's more like a stepped ramp. Which can be really cool too. And we can make that faster. Or really slow. So right now I'm using the envelope generator 1 as an LFO plugged into the CV input of the sample and hold, creating, basically creating a stepped LFO. That's a cool effect too. Let's bring down the FM level on these oscillators so the variation is not so extreme. You get more like almost like a video game, like old school video game type effect. So that's pretty cool. Now if I want to do something fun with the filter, I can take the inverted output from the envelope generator that's acting as an LFO, and that way we animate the filter a little bit too. It's actually going opposite of the oscillators. As the oscillators go up in pitch, the filter goes down. So cool. So that shows you how to use the envelope generator's extra functions, like the gate delay output as a trigger for the second envelope generator. Also how to use the cycle mode of the envelope generator to use the envelope generator as an LFO. We've checked out the modulator's pulse as a clock source that is synchronized with the sample and hold. You can also use a separate clock for the sample and hold. It's got its own clock input here. So I could have used the gate delay from this to actually synchronize the sample and hold to my LFO rather than to the internal square wave right there. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of things you can do with this. There's another thing about this VCA, is that it has a dual mode, which means that the two VCAs will actually go in series rather than in parallel, meaning one after the other. And the cool thing about that is that you can use one of them for the normal envelope generator, volume contour usage, and you can use the second one as a volume control based on the velocity. And this MIDI to CV converter has a mod output right here, which can be configured to respond either to the mod wheel or to the velocity. So that way you can actually determine how loud the notes will be based on how strongly you hit the keys, which is really interesting for a monophonic old school synthesizer like this too. Not a lot of them have that function. So let's check that out. Remove everything. And it's actually good for you guys to see me patch and repatch this thing, because sometimes you understand really well what's going on when I'm narrating, but it's a different thing to really internalize the concepts and be able to reproduce them later. So it's repetition is not necessarily a bad thing in this case. So let me just organize myself with the cables here again, and let's see if I can do this without making any mistakes. And we're going to use one voice mode. So this is going to be a monophonic patch again. And once again, we're going to use the gate outputs. They're not labeled. The gate outputs are the bottom ones, the ones right below the LEDs. It makes sense because it says CV gate, so you could deduce that CV is the top one and gate's the bottom one. But I'll just make sure that you know that. Now we see that the LEDs are off on the envelope generator because it was normal high before I plugged something into here. Now that I've plugged the gate outputs from the MIDI into these gate inputs and I'm not triggering anything, then now they're waiting for a signal to actually trigger. And we're going to use, again, one envelope generator for the filter. The other envelope generator is going to go into one of the VCAs, CV input. Now, the mod output from the MIDI to CV converter is going to go into the CV input 2, and we're going to flip this into dual mode, right? So now in dual mode it's in series, meaning one VCA output is going into the input of the other one, which you could also just patch in single mode, but it's handy to have the switch and be able to save a patch cable there. Now we're going to plug in CV output from the MIDI into voltage per octave input of each VCA again, VCO, sorry. VCOs are going to go into our mixer. And again, I'm going to use the pulse wave from one of them and the saw wave from the other one. And I did use the noise. I plugged in the noise, but we never heard it on my first patch. So I'm going to do it again now so we can hear that noise as part of the sound. The output of the mixer, again, is going to go into the filter input, right? and the filter output is going to go into VCA 1's audio input. And we're going to take the mixed output from the VCA. Well, actually, I think we take output 2, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it makes sense because you want to take the output from the last VCA that is connected in series. Here we go. Yeah, and that seems to work. Let's just tune these. Get that filter down a little bit. Alright, let's move these cables out of my way, out of the way of the keyboard. And now, check it out. If I play strong, get a nice loud note. If you play soft, you get a nice soft note. Let's go up an octave. Another common use for the velocity would be for filtering as well. So let's take that mod output and put it into my multiple. And now we're going to take one output from the multiple back into that CV input over there, of the VCA. And the other one, we'll put it in the CV input 2 of the filter. So now, not only will the sound get louder, it'll also get brighter. Yeah, we need to turn on the reason I'm using the headphones output is because it's really handy to have a volume control right on the rack here. Got it. Yeah, maybe make it more noticeable by turning up CV2 level on the filter. And check it out. Not only will it get louder, it'll also get brighter the harder I hit. That makes for a very expressive patch. Oh, and here's the noise. As part of the patch, which can be really cool. The filter also works in bandpass mode. Low pass mode again. I do like adding noise to a patch. You can even only use noise. You do like percussive things like that. You can even take the 1 voltage per octave output and actually control the filter and kind of play melodically with noise that way. So let's just check that idea out. We would remove the envelope generator from CV input 1, crank up the CV1 level, and crank up the resonance. That's a cool effect too. So let's go back to what we had with the oscillators and less resonance on the filter. bring down the noise, bring up the oscillators. So yeah, once you have the patch up, then just using switches and knobs, you can get a lot of variation. There we go. Let's give it a little release so the filter isn't closing so hard. And now we're back to our velocity controlled patch. And let's hear how it sounds when you plug in the saw wave from one oscillator to the sync input, the hard sync input on the other one. There you go. You get that cool hard sync sound where you accentuate different harmonics. You can even take the 1 volt per octave out of this. So this one is fixed, and it's actually being re-triggered by the wave is actually being re-triggered by the other oscillator in sync here. So that's pretty cool. Also, there's pulse width modulation. So I can send the triangle wave, for example, from the modulator module into the pulse width input. There you go. I know Nick Bat will be happy to see this. And that makes one oscillator sound kind of like two oscillators slightly detuned. And you can even use it sort of as a VCA, because if you turn the manual pulse width control down, when you sum in a negative voltage into the pulse width modulation input right here, you actually get silence. You know, if you have a short enough pulse, it won't even sound. So that's a neat way to insert silences to your patch too without using VCA. Kind of like a machine gun tremolo kind of effect. So cool. I think that's about all I wanted to show you guys and girls about all the features of the system. If there's anything in specific that you'd like me to address, I can probably do another video later on. So go ahead and write something down in the comment section. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, as usual, I'm going to ask you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and if possible, contribute to our Patreon page. And stay noisy. Have fun.